Hey everybody, it's Double M from the Touch 'Em Up podcast, and I've got some very exciting news. I'm thrilled to announce my partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert. Now you may be wondering what that is, but this is opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join some of my favorite sports books in order to get the best odds and new user offers depending on the event. Head over to my dedicated sign up page, which I've linked in the description at signupexpert.com/touchemup. This will allow you to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailor-made to your specific region without you having to do any additional work. So without any further ado, if you're ready to support the Touch 'Em Up podcast just one step further and also catapult your sports betting experience at the same time, make sure to follow my Sign Up Expert link that's posted in the description of this video whenever you sign up to a new sportsbook. All right, everybody, we are back just like last week for my best bets for UFC Vegas, Lemos versus Jandiroba. This is again going to be just like we did last week with the best bets, my favorite long shot plays, and this isn't going to cover every single fight, so if that's something you're expecting, you're just not going to get that here. I'm picking my favorite plays for certain fights on the card. Not every fight is bettable, not every fight has a ton of value, but I tried to find the aspects of each fight that I like, and that's just kind of what we're going to go with. We're going to end up calling this segment Double M's Bookie Beatdown. So this is technically the inaugural episode of Double M's Bookie Beatdown based on UFC Vegas 94, Lemos versus Jandiroba. You can see on the screen right now the first fight up between Luana Carolina and Lucille Pudilova. I don't really like betting on women's fights unless it's, main event fights. I feel like I have a pretty good read on some of those. Keyword some, not all. But I think the under 2.5 at plus 290 is decent value. Pudilova's a good grappler. Carolina can hold her own on the ground, but she's going to have a big advantage in the striking, putting her combinations together, being the longer, taller, more dangerous fighter on the feet. And then if she gets taken down, there's always a chance that Pudilova can continue to get those takedowns, wear down Carolina, and eventually get a sub or get a ground and pound finish. I think with these two lower level women's MMA fighters, the under 2.5 at almost 3-1 is worth a sprinkle. Now, is it the best idea to bet unders in women's fights? No, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think this is the best play on the card or whatever, but like we said in the beginning of the video, we're looking for value, keyword value, and I think at a plus 290, there's a decent sized clip that the under would be lower than this number. So I think the under 2.5 at plus 290 is good on the Luana Carolina, Lucille Pudilova fight. Probably more striking based TKO finish from Carolina, and then a ground and pound into a sub finish for the higher level grappler / wrestler in Lucille Pudilova. I think the under 2.5 is, like I said, I think there's value here. It's not my favorite play, which is why it was the first one in the video, but I think it's worth a sprinkle at plus 290. All right, up next is the Trey Ogden versus Loik Razabov fight. I think that the Ogden in round 3 is worth a sprinkle. My pick for my underdog of the week is Trey Ogden against Loik, because I think the technical advantage, the jab, the usage of the lead hand, and the footwork is going to be too much for Loik. And yes, Loik is powerful. He's very strong. He's a very heavy wrestler, but Ogden can grapple himself. Look at how easily he took down and controlled his last opponent in Kurt Holloway, who's also on this card. I think he can compete in the wrestling, and I think as long as he can avoid staying against the cage and getting hit with a big overhand right or a big left hook on the way out as he circles, yes, it's a big worry when you're fighting a guy who's as powerful as Razabov. But at the same time, I think Ogden in round 3, there's no number out yet, but I think Trey Ogden to win in round 3 is going to be good value, and the number is going to be good enough to sprinkle because we know that Loik's going to tire out. Yeah, he got the knockout in the 3rd round against Kareem El Salwati. That is a play where I had El Salwati by TKO round 2-3, and I thought for sure we were on our way to cashing that going into the 3rd round. It didn't happen. He got hit with a big overhand, got dropped, and got finished. So we know that Loik carries his power into the 3rd round, but I think the game planning, the footwork, and the movement will slow down Loik and stop him from being able to execute his game plan in the early round. And if Ogden is able to change levels and get some takedowns and control on the ground, I think it'll just make Loik more tired. And then there's even a higher probability and chance that we get Trey Ogden to get an arm triangle like he got in the third round against Nicholas Mota, which was called a no contest. That really just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't even want to talk about it. It makes me want to throw up. But I think he can get takedowns. I think he can use his jab and his footwork to control the distance. And I think he makes Loic swing and miss a lot and eventually just wears him out, starts putting combinations together, getting takedowns, and maybe a third round sub for Trey Ogden or a TKO. I know he's not known as a finisher, but I guarantee you're going to get at least 30-1 on Ogden to win in round 3, and I think it's worth a sprinkle, and there's going to be a lot of value on that because of the type of fighter that Rajabov is and the fact that he is going to slow down. So give me Trey Ogden and Trey Ogden to win in round 3 for my favorite play on this fight in particular. Up next is going to be Deone Barbosa over Miranda Maverick. I think there's a lot of good value on the money line at plus 180. It was all the way up to plus 190 earlier in the week, but I think this really comes down to the fact that I don't think Miranda Maverick is good enough to be a 3-1 favorite in any fight, unless it's a very, very low-level fight, like against a Priscilla Cachoeira. But Deone Barbosa, the Witch, is pretty good on the feet. She's going to be, I believe, the more technical striker, where I think that Miranda Maverick's going to have the better cardio. And although I think Maverick has the better wrestling, I think it's going to play right into the game of Deone Barbosa with, going for arm bars, going for leg locks, looking to take the back, winning scrambles and looking to put the hooks in and go for a submission if she is able to get the back of Miranda Maverick. And I do think Miranda Maverick, obviously, UFC experience, we talk about it all the time. It does mean something, but again, the number is just way off, especially the moneyline number. There's no world where I would put Maverick as a 3-1 favorite against anybody, unless it was, like we said, Priscilla Cachoeira. She came in as a huge favorite against Jasmine Jasudavicius and lost when Jasmine was over a 2-1 underdog, and she didn't just lose. She pretty much got dominated. I think Barbosa can hang with her on the feet. I think she has more power than Miranda Maverick on the feet. And I think Miranda Maverick she might be a little bit hesitant in shooting takedowns and wrestling because of the phenomenal jiu-jitsu that Barbosa has. Going for rear naked chokes, going for arm bars, going for leg locks, looking to take the back, going for sweeps. I think there's a lot of value here on Deone Barbosa. I think she's the more dangerous fighter overall. I think she has a higher probability of getting a finish. So I like the money line, and then I like Barbosa sub at plus 1,000 or plus 1,100. It was all the way up at plus 1,100, but it's down to plus 1,000. I think Barbosa sub is probably the way she would finish it if she does get a finish, and I think at 11 or 12-1, I mean, you're kind of just begging to throw money down at that point because that number just seems off to me. Even though Maverick hasn't really been submitted, I don't think she's faced anybody with the jiu-jitsu credentials and the jiu-jitsu skill of a Deone Barbosa. I think Deone Barbosa to win by sub in round 2-3 is probably the better idea because I think people are expecting Barbosa to just come into this fight and tire out completely in round 3. But I think Carrasqueta or Ernesta Carrasqueta, the girl she just fought, is much higher level on the feet than Miranda Maverick, and she's not going to have nearly as much danger in the striking as she did in her last fight. And that's the reason why I picked Carrasqueta to win. And in this fight, I think Barbosa is more dangerous on the feet. She has the higher finishing probability throughout the fight, and she's going to be put into positions to be able to execute her jiu-jitsu off of her back or potentially get a sweep and wind up on top in a scramble. So I like Barbosa money line, and I like Barbosa sub at 11-1 or 10-1. And then if you want to sprinkle Barbosa sub 2-3, I think it's like 20-1, something like that, plus 2,000, plus 1,800. And I think there's a lot of value on that line as well. So I like the Witch in Barbosa, and I just don't see a reason why Maverick is so highly favored in this matchup. Next up is Haider Emil versus Jung-Young Lee. I like Haider Emil. The money line was all the way up at plus 220. It's now gone down to plus 164. I still think there's value. If it drops under plus 150, I probably wouldn't play money line. But I think that Jung-Young Lee is very good. He had a great and dominant performance against Blake Bilder, the former CFFC champion, and the man who won a contract to the UFC on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. But I think Jung-Young Lee probably at a higher clip is going to win this fight. But I like Haider Emil's forward pressure. I like his angles. I like his boxing. I like the fact that he uses those inside and outside low kicks. And I just like the fact that he's a dog, man. I like his forward pressure, and I like the fact that he's going to come to get this win. Like, he's not going to stay on the outside. He's not going to play around. He's not going to point fight. He's going to get in the face of Jung Young Lee and try to take him out. And I think that's the only way you're really going to beat a guy like Jung Young Lee. You're not going to beat him by staying on the outside and trying to win a point fighting style of matchup. It's just not going to happen. He's long, he's tall, he's rangy. He finishes combinations with kicks. He works very good to the body, the left hook and the right hook to the body, the cross to the body as well. And I think you have to make it a dirty fight if you're going to beat a guy like Jung Young Lee. And I think the perfect guy to do that is Haider Emil. Do I love him as a play? No, but if I'm going to play the fight, I would play Haider Emil. I like Emil by KO as well at plus 400. Like I said, this isn't my favorite fight to play, but I'm looking for value, and I think there's value on Emil KO, and I also think there's value on Haider Emil by KO in round 2 and round 3. I think that he can kind of break a guy like Jung Young Lee. There's definitely that possibility that Jung Young Lee just stays on the outside, picks him apart, lands good counters, gets some takedowns, and slows down Haider Emil and maybe grabs his neck in the later rounds for a submission. I do think that that is something that can happen, but I think Emil is powerful. He comes forward, he gets in he gets in his opponent's face, and he tries to get that win, and he will try to break you as early as he can. I think at plus 850, the round 2-3 TKO is a very good number, because I don't think Jung Young Lee is going to be a guy who goes out in the first round. So if I was going to play a number, I usually like to skip the first round in most situations anyway, but I think that round 2-3 is worth a sprinkle, because I think if he gets a finish, it's going to be more of an attritional finish and him just kind of breaking down Jung Young Lee the longer the fight goes. And I think that if Jung Young Lee gets a finish, it would be more of an attritional finish down the stretch and kind of breaking Haider Emil and maybe winning a scramble, getting a top position, landing ground and pound, and getting a sub. So I like Emil KO plus 400, and I like Emil KO 2-3 at plus 850. Like I said, it's not my favorite plays on the card, but I definitely think it's worth a shot, and plus 850 is a really good number on the 2-3 KO. All right, next up, it's going to be Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. I like the Silva side here. I think he's the more dangerous guy. He throws with better technical ability on the feet. His striking is sharper, it's crisper, it's cleaner, and he also has submissions. And with a high-level wrestler like Cody Durden, he's going to come forward. He's going to try that embrace the grind strategy, go for singles, go for doubles, push forward, and just try to break you with his wrestling. He's getting more comfortable on the feet. I think that's probably due to working with Alexandre Pantoja over at American Top Team. But I think against a guy like Bruno Silva, although Cody Durden has the better high-level experience in the UFC, that wrestling and forward pressure, it's going to leave his neck out there for potential guillotines, potential ninja chokes, potential submission upside from the fighter in Bruno Silva. And Silva's going to be the much more dangerous fighter on the feet. Good front kicks, good 1-2s down the middle, decent counter shots with hooks and overhands. And I think he's going to be the fighter that does the most damage in this fight, keyword damage, where Durden is going to be the guy who's pushing forward, landing some combinations, changing levels, and trying to break Bruno Silva, just like he does to all his other opponents. He'll throw a few shots, change levels, get takedowns, look to control from the top position, and mainly try to win this fight on control time. I like Silva inside the distance at plus 240 because I think the submission is definitely there with the heavy wrestling of Durden. He could leave his neck out, he could get caught in a guillotine, caught in a ninja choke. But I also like the round 2-3 KO, because I think Durden's chin is also there to be clipped and you know, causing him to be dropped. Maybe he gets dropped and gets caught in a sub, which is why I like the inside the distance. But Silva KO 2-3 is also a solid play, and it's at a pretty good number of plus 1,200. And I think plus 1,200 is off. Even though we haven't really seen Durden get finished, he got hurt with a flying knee and pretty much knocked out on the feet against Muhammad Mokaev in his debut. Then he got submitted. He's gotten hurt multiple times in his fights before, and I think his chin is liable. And I think at plus 1,200, Bruno Silva can definitely find the chin of Cody Durden because he's much sharper, much cleaner, and much more dangerous in terms of the overall striking. As long as the fight stays on the feet, it's playing into the hands of Bruno Silva. So at plus 1,200, I think the 2-3 KO is a solid play. But if you think the sub is viable, which I do because of the wrestling approach and him sticking his neck out there, then plus 240 is probably your best bet for Silva inside the distance. All right, next up, it's the battle in the featherweight division between Steve Garcia and Sungwoo Choi. I see a lot of people playing Sungwoo Choi, and I get it. He's got a very good counter left hook, but he kind of just spams his left hook. He doesn't put a lot of his combinations out there. He doesn't throw his 1-2 that much. He'll throw 2, come back with the left hook, and he kind of has fallen in love with his left hook, and Steve Garcia can get clipped. He can get hit, he can get hurt, he can get wobbled. He's usually always losing the fights early on, and then he comes back towards the end of the first round, going into the second round, and really starts to put it on his opponent. His nickname is the Mean Machine, and it's the Mean Machine for a reason. I like Steve Garcia in this spot. I just think he's going to survive and weather an early storm and then just counter Sungwoo Choi as he walks in and clip him on the chin and hurt him. So I like Garcia KO 2-3 at plus 600 because I think that number is a little bit off. I know people are probably expecting a first round KO, and yeah, he got clipped and hurt by Michael Trezano, and I believe that was in the first round when he got knocked out, but he hurt Trezano as well, and it was kind of a firefight with whoever landing the kill shot first, and it just so happened to be Trezano. I think that the KO is probably more likely in round 2 and round 3. I don't think it's a first round finish for Steve Garcia, but I like the Steve Garcia sub at plus 3,100. I think that number's off, and I think if you go back and you watch the Mel Costa fight, he landed good ground and pound, he hurt him, he dropped him, and he went for the rear naked choke a couple times, and he ended up giving it up just to go for more ground and pound to get the finish, and I think that's going to wear people off or scare people off of the sub. But I think it's live, man. I think Garcia is a smart fighter, and I think he can hurt his opponent, and if the neck is there, he's going to take it. And he didn't give up the submission position right away. He had it in for a little bit, probably could have got it if he stayed on it, but he didn't want to gas his arms out, and I think Sungwoo Choi is live to get clipped on the way in, get hurt, and maybe panic wrestle and get caught in a guillotine, maybe get caught in an anaconda choke, maybe even get dropped, get into a scramble, give up his back, and get caught in a rear naked choke just like Mel Costa. Even though Costa is much more of a grappler than Sungwoo Choi, I think he's live to hurt Sungwoo Choi and then grab his neck and go for a sub. So I think it's there, and I think at plus 3,100, you got to sprinkle it in round 2 and round 3. Could happen in round 1, but at 31 to 1, I mean, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't sprinkle on it. It's more likely he gets the KO, which is why I included it at plus 600, but I think plus 3,100, round 2-3 sub for Steve Garcia, knowing that he did look for it in positions against Mel Costa, I think it's there. So give me Garcia KO 2-3 plus 600 and Garcia sub 2-3 at 31 to 1 at plus 3,100. All right, the next one up is the co-main event between Brad Tavares and Jung Young Park. I like Tavares money line at plus 130 and Tavares by decision at plus 230. I think it's pretty, simple reasoning as well. Brad Tavares, basically impossible to take down in the UFC. If he gets taken down, he works his way back up immediately. And I don't think Jung Young Park has the wrestling to get Tavares to the ground, which makes this basically a kickboxing fight. And if you were going to bet on a kickboxing fight between Tavares and Jung Young Park, although Jung Young Park uses his jab well, he moves around, he pumps it, throws the right hand decently, comes over the top with elbows, I think you would heavily favor Brad Tavares in a kickboxing match, and I think that's exactly what this is going to be. I think Tavares has the cleaner counters, I think Tavares has the cleaner striking overall, the cleaner boxing, and I think he's live to hurt Jung Young Park, but I think it probably goes the distance. I don't think he's going to put the Iron Turtle away. I mean, his nickname's the Iron Turtle for a reason. He's not an easy guy to finish. But, I like Tavares money line, but I really like the Tavares by decision, plus 230. I think if he wins, it is by decision. I don't see a finish from the side of Tavares in this fight, and I think if he wins, it is by decision. So plus 230 in what's basically going to be a full-on kickboxing match, because I don't expect Park to have much success with the takedowns. I think it's, like I said, simple math and simple reasoning. So Brad Tavares money line plus 130. Brad Tavares by decision at plus 230. Those are my favorite plays for that fight, and they kind of speak for themselves. All right, and then in the main event of the evening between Amanda Lemos and Verna Jandiroba, I like the 2-3-4 lines for Lemos, whether you want to play KO, which is at plus 480, or sub 2-3-4 at plus 2,700, 27 to 1. I think it's more likely it's a KO because we know that Jandiroba is going to be looking for those takedowns, going to be looking to get in the face of Amanda Lemos, going to be looking to get those trips, going to be looking to sell out and try to sweep to get on top of Lemos, and she's probably going to get takedowns. Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I think Jandiroba probably gets some takedowns, probably winds up in the top position at certain points, but I don't think she's going to be able to submit Lemos, and I don't think she's going to win by a ground and pound TKO. And I think the longer that the fight goes, it plays into the fighter experience who has 5-round experience in Amanda Lemos. 5 rounds with Zhang Weili, where she could have quit multiple times in that fight, and she was able to make it to the bell. 5-round experience against Mackenzie Dern, even getting a finish later in that fight when she was probably down on the scorecards. I think she carries her power late. I think she probably does get tired in this fight. She won against Mackenzie Dern, did Lemos, even though it was a somewhat controversial decision, but the damage and forward pressure in bigger moments was definitely on the side of Lemos. That was a fight where we backed Lemos, and I think she has the defensive grappling and the defensive wrestling to ward off any potential finishing sequences, and I think for as long as the fight is on the feet, the power and the technical kickboxing of Amanda Lemos is really going to play into her favor the longer the fight goes, in the end of the 2nd round, in the 3rd round, in the 4th round. I don't think we get to the 5th round regardless of who wins this fight. I think Lemos is going to work her way back up to the feet. I think she's going to tag Jandiroba on the feet. She's going to hurt her. We've seen Jandiroba get hurt multiple times in her career before, just not getting finished. And I thought Lupi Godinez was going to get a TKO in that fight, but she just went to the grappling and gave positions to Jandiroba that she shouldn't have, and if she was going to keep it on the feet, I think she would have finished her, but she didn't. So I like the KO at plus 480 for round 2, 3, 4. It was originally plus 500. Somebody put some money on it. It's down now. Anything over plus 400 I think is a good bet, but I think it's worth a sprinkle also on the 2, 3, 4 sub for Lemos. She goes for ninja chokes. She went for a ninja choke against Zhang Weili. It got very close, and she was able to get out of it. She jumps for guillotines like she did against Michelle Waterson. And who's to say that she doesn't rock Jandiroba? Jandiroba shoots a bad takedown, and she jumps on a ninja choke. She jumps on a guillotine. She jumps on a Darce choke. Lemos has jiu-jitsu and grappling in her own right. Would it be smart to go for submissions against the fighter who wants to fight on the ground? No. But later on in the fight, when Jandiroba gets tired because she hasn't been able to finish and she's going for constant takedowns and trying to get, top control time, I think she might be more susceptible to giving up if she gets her neck caught in a bad position. So I think sprinkling the Lemos sub at 27-1 is worth it at plus 2,700. And those are my best tips for UFC Vegas. 94? Lemos versus Jandiroba. What are we going to call this show again? I forgot. I had a name for it. Double M's Bookie Beatdown. So this is it for the first episode of Double M's Bookie Beatdown. I hope you enjoyed the plays that I've given out. I hope you sprinkle and tail some of the plays that I have. And let's make some money this weekend at UFC Vegas 94.